Sit back and get ready to have the most fun you ever had with an electronic device.
I think my point in saying this is and ironically, the Dodgers won the World Series in both of those years.
They win all the time.
When there's less games, the Dodgers win.
That's
We're the laziest champs ever.
All right, folks, welcome out to the log room. It is Wednesday, it's not October, it's November now. November 4th, 2020. Jersey Johnny coming at you. With me, as always, are Mr. RadioPete and Mr. Harry Lug Nutz. Say hello, guys.
Hello, guys.
Hello, guys.
It's October 33rd.
It's October 35th, actually.
5th. There you go.
Yeah. It almost doesn't matter what day it is.
It really does.
Still 2020, and that's the problem.
That's the problem. That's exactly the problem. But
nothing's going on in the world these days.
There's
nothing that's happened in the last day or so.
It's very blobby.
Yeah.
Nothing exciting to talk
about. The whole world hasn't been up for 14 hours straight watching Steve Kornacki.
I think there is an official contest to see who can stay awake longer than Steve Kornacki.
They finally took him down and plugged him in to an outlet.
He needed a charge. I mean, he really did. He was down to 4%. It was like the light was blinking. So.
That's right. He's also the Roomba for the MSNBC studio.
He never goes home.
That sucks.
See
where I went?
Zing. All right. So some sports in the world too.
Dad joke number one.
Speaking of sucking, let's get to some football. What do you think?
Sure.
Yeah, why not?
I think we're getting a little bit of a distance between who's the worst team in New York. Just a little bit.
There's still just a little bit.
Unfortunately for Giants fans.
You know what? Yeah, it's unfortunate, but you know what? What really is more unfortunate than that is the fact that, again, the Giants won that game, and I'm not gonna get into the whole bad calls thing. I mean, I certainly thought that was interference at the end, and there was a fine line. But if they're throwing flags for the things that they're throwing flags for, they should have not picked up that flag. That was, with some of the BS interference calls that they've called throughout the season, that was definitely interference.
Okay, so it is interference. The Giants get the ball back.
Oh, they're losing in overtime.
And they don't even score. That doesn't. I mean, if a penalty was called, it's not like they get the 2-point conversion automatically.
This is true.
So you would have to put the ball back in Daniel Jones' hands, and he would have to cross the goal line or throw it to somebody. So they lose. They lose anyway, and we want them to lose because now Trevor Lawrence, because of COVID, is resting at home.
Right.
Getting ready to, we want them to lose. We don't want them to beat Tampa Bay on a Monday. It's just.
Yeah, no. I see what you're talking about. And to be quite honest with you, I blame Daniel Jones on that play more than I blame the refs picking up the flag, because if he'd have thrown that ball where he should have thrown that ball to the pylon, it would have been a 2-point conversion.
I thought it was a penalty the first time I saw it in live action. And then looking at it and kind of listening to the letter of what the rules are, again, if I'm going to be consistent, I let him play. I think he was there at the same time as the ball. It was really close, and they didn't call it, so they shouldn't have reversed it. And
that was kind of what struck me, is that I mean, looking at it, I didn't see it initially in real time, but looking at it over and over again, and in real time, although later, I thought it could have gone either way.
Yeah, it was close.
They made a call, and I just didn't feel like there was really overwhelming evidence that it should have been overturned. They shouldn't have picked up the flag. You made the call. You could dispute that it was right. You could say, yeah, it was right, or no, it wasn't. And I think there's good arguments for both of those things. But that was the call that was made, and unless it was really obvious that it was wrong, you shouldn't have picked up the flag.
Right. Right, exactly.
But they lost, and they're terrible.
Well,
but end of discussion.
Here's a couple takeaways from that game. I think Jones, obviously, he missed. Who was it? Sterling Shepard, who was wide open, or was that Golden Tate?
It was Slayton, Darius
So,
Slayton.
yeah, I mean that should have been a touchdown. He had 2 interceptions and a fumble?
Both his interceptions. He didn't have the fumble. Both of his interceptions.
No fumble this week.
Yeah. Both of his interceptions, Darius Slayton was wide open.
Yeah.
Both times. He would have had a touchdown. Both of those interceptions would have been touchdowns. He actually just saw Darius Slayton.
Having said that, I thought the Giants made a lot of improvements on offense. Their offensive line looked a lot better. The play calling was, I think, helping Daniel Jones out a little bit more, was getting the ball out of his hands a little quicker.
Right.
And the Giants defense against a pretty good team, arguably maybe the best team in the NFC, looked a lot better than they have all year. Mm-hmm. So I think, unfortunately, the Giants are heading in a direction that means that we're going to be stuck with Daniel Jones for a while.
Well, there's an interesting debate that I've heard over the last couple of days. And, one side of the debate is Daniel Jones just hasn't really had enough time, right? There's always caveats, but he's only played 20 games. He's played less than 2 full seasons. There was no preseason. Practices this year were sort of a slow motion walkthrough. You got to give him some more time. Look at the great quarterbacks, Aikman and Manning and all that, and how I think I heard Manning had 100 interceptions in his first 50 games, and all these things. You got to give him time.
Manning had 100 interceptions in a couple of his last games too.
Well, yeah, but the point being, some of the all-time greats were terrible to start, and it wasn't just they were terrible for their first 4 games.
Right.
They were pretty bad through what he's been through 16 games now. So got to give him more time.
The
flip side of that argument is he's still making this. Those interceptions were terrible. He has to, after 20 games, he has to know you just throw the ball out of bounds. You don't just put it up there. He's still making the same mistakes.
Yeah. Still
didn't have a fumble this week, but still making whatever it is, 35 turnovers in those first 20 games. He's close to 2 per game. And if you don't learn in those 20 games not to throw the ball like that, then you're never going to learn it, and it's time to move on. So that was kind of the question. Is it time to move on, or does he just need more time to get
out of stubbornness, the Giants won't move on. But, I mean, if the Giants had a chance to get Trevor Lawrence and they don't take him, then that's on the Giants. No, look, he's a 4-year starter at a school that most people don't realize has a football team.
Right.
And he's a 5th, 6th round selection at best. And he was taken with what? What was the pick that he was taken with? The 17th pick in the draft?
17, yeah. Well, that's part of the question is, well, do we expect too much of him because they reached for him and drafted him at 17?
Well, my point is that he shouldn't be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
So in your opinion, it's time to move on.
There was never a time to move in.
Well, let me ask it like this. It's clearly the consensus is that he just hasn't figured out his flaws yet, and
but he's had flashes of wow. Let's say
flashes of wow. Yeah, no, he
has. Compared to what?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying what people said.
Other than the run stumbles and whatchamacallit, and this is true. I was just going to say that too. I didn't want to bring that up, but John Donovan just mentioned Jones was the 6th pick overall last year.
There you go. That makes me feel even worse.
Even worse. Yeah, he was the 6th pick overall. Thanks, John.
Is that right?
Oh, and by the way, just to throw one other thing up here, Dave, Beer Samurai, Mr. Samurai, says, the call was made. The refs didn't want to get off Brady's Christmas list. That was
there we go. The Brady jokes. Yeah, it's hard being the best of all time.
Yeah, the golden boy gets the
golden boy.
The non-calls in this case. But sorry, go ahead, John.
But back to what I was saying, and no, he should be better than he is by now with the flashes of brilliance on rare occasions that we've seen, and the decent quarterback play that we've seen most of the time. The stupidity when it comes to the errant throws and the interceptions and the Danny fumbles. And I think he's got his fumbles under control. I think he was focusing on that more than actually using his mind to realize where he needs to put the ball when he's being under pressured. But as far as that goes, we've pretty much all agreed that if the Giants wind up with a pick that they can get Trevor Lawrence, it's a no-brainer. They're taking Trevor Lawrence. They're moving on from Danny Dimes. We get it. Let me ask you this. If they can't get Trevor Lawrence, do they still move on from Danny Dimes?
Again, moving on is the hardest thing to do is admit you made a mistake and then move on.
especially with Gettleman.
Yeah,
he will never. He's
I'm a Giants fan. I want to be wrong. I want him to be great, but name a starting quarterback who's better than him. You can't
name a starting quarterback who's better than
Daniel Jones.
Right in the NFL.
In the NFL right now. Look, the argument is he hasn't had enough time. The Giants stink. I get all that, but the difference between him and a Joe Burrow is the difference between a guy who should be starting in the NFL in his first year and a guy who should be a backup
a backup. Who should be sitting on the bench and learning.
Right.
Which is the way it used to be.
And this argument that he has no talent is I don't buy it.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think anybody really believes that.
When the Giants have decent receivers, and
I mean Golden Tate's not been a slouch when it comes to receiving. I mean, between the Seahawks and I won't even go into the 1 year on the Eagles, but between the Seahawks and the Lions, he was a great receiver.
Right.
I mean, so
how much more time do you give him? And then that's the thing is that okay, and in the meantime, you're building a team around Daniel Jones and, in my humble opinion, a running back who's going to have a career of injuries. Right. And all of the so-called improvements that they've brought in are not really panning out. Yet the guys who are they have I think the Giants have good support players right now that are growing into themselves, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and to some extent on the offensive side as well. If you were to put any of the other first-round picks in the NFL on this team, the Giants would be a much better team at quarterback. No, I don't think he's a top 20 quarterback. I don't think he's a top 25 quarterback. And if you're going to win, you need somebody who's at least deserving to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And I don't see that with Daniel Jones. And maybe I'm being too hard on him, but I don't think I am.
Well, John Donovan just asked, and I'm assuming he means last year, if you don't have the first pick, do you take Justin Herbert if he's available when they pick? I mean, he's not been a too big of a slouch. No,
he looks pretty good.
He looks damn good.
I don't know what was the book on him, before the draft though. I mean, obviously
the year before when Daniel Jones came out, he didn't come out in the draft, but
right. I mean, I know there's some people were high on him, but right. I don't know. Would you take him? What would you prefer him with a like a number 6 pick?
Well, there's all these redrafts. There's all these 2014 redraft, 2015 redraft. I mean, it's hindsight is 2020, but I thought based on and I got to admit I didn't watch a lot of Justin Herbert's college play. I saw a couple of games, but it wasn't like he was playing for Ohio State or Wisconsin or Penn State or anything where I was looking at the games. But
I remember the book on him being he'd be a guy that you would take a chance on, and it'd be a good chance if you didn't get one of the big guys.
Right.
If you couldn't get the guy you wanted, Herbert would be possibly an acceptable alternative. That was what I remember. I don't think he was at the top of anyone's list.
I mean, there were at least 40 players better than Daniel Jones with the 6th pick. That's my point.
Yeah. All right. So that was a mistake that they picked him, and they'll never admit it. And they're terrible.
Yes. All right. Now that's it, folks. See you next week.
That's all we need to next week. We've already spent probably 9 minutes more on the Giants.
Spent 9 minutes more
than they deserve.
We should have. The only thing I will say is that the defense does look better than I thought they were. Playing.
They were flying around.
They were. I mean, kudos to the defense. Kudos to Patrick Graham, and getting them.
If they could just play Brady every week.
Yeah,
then they'd probably win a couple of those.
That's right.
Why not?
But that would be bad for. But they're going to win a couple more games, right?
Right. No,
this season.
Well, they're going to win the NFC East, and they'll probably meet Brady in the NFC Championship game. So
there we go. That would be perfect.
John Donovan actually said Justin Fields when he was talking about Ohio State's Justin Fields.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So,
all right.
I mean, at this point, Justin Timberlake would be better.
Justin Timberlake might actually work out better.
Can we get Justin Tuck back?
Just in time. Would even be good.
Just in time.
Yeah, he always gets a,
at this point, I'd take just in case.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about the Jets.
Why?
Well, they're terrible, and they lost to Kansas City, and that's all we need to say.
Well,
they're the biggest confidence boost any NFL team could ever have.
Yeah. If you're down on your luck, play the Jets.
Well, and let's just say this. I don't know if you guys caught Joe Douglas's comments the other day. And, of course, he's not going to come out and say, no, there's obviously no way we're keeping Adam Gase next season. But it sounded like there's a possibility that they might keep Adam Gase for next season,
if they
which
keep Adam
seems
Gase
highly implausible. But, again, he's not going to throw the guy under the bus, you would think. But I don't know. I didn't get a good feeling from hearing those comments. I think it was on the Michael Kay show, I believe it was.
Yeah, well, I mean, who knows what is behind all of that, but it could just be that they know they're going to stick with him through the end of this year, and they don't want to hedge their bets.
I would imagine that's probably what it boils down to. Joe Douglas is probably just spewing some information.
Well, but I guess the theory that's kind of going around is, well, this is a tank job.
Sure.
And so they're not going to fire Adam Gase because he's doing exactly what they want.
Right.
And, which is, okay, maybe that's the case, but we're still not seeing that he's capable. I mean, in other words, they're looking at the second half of last year and saying, see what Adam Gase can do. They started off terribly, and then they went 6-2 in the second half of the year. And now we're going to tank, and so we're not going to judge him on this season because we don't want to win games. And that's, like, to me, that is a horrible, horrible way to go about things.
It is a horrible way to go about things. And you know what? I would say that that's a ridiculous theory, but the only thing that would actually make sense to me about that was the way they looked when Adam Gase gave up the play calling duties last week when they played the Bills. When they played the way they played, the offense-wise anyway, they played the way they played in the first half and were able to do the things they did on offense. And mind you, it wasn't like they were all of a sudden the 84 49ers or the Patriots for the last 20 years. They were, a decent team or whatever against the Bills. But what they were able to do in the first half and then to come out in the second half almost seems like they flipped the switch and got 4 total yards of offense. Almost seems like they flipped the switch and saying, oh, whoa, stop it. We want this first pick. Play horribly, please. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, and it was almost like they paid pretty decent. I mean, they held the Bills to 6 points in the first half.
Right.
And maybe they weren't expecting that. Maybe they were running the offense they wanted to run, and they figured, hey, listen, we got 10 points, and they were expecting to give up 17 points or 20 points, right. But their defense actually, got it done, and so then they sort of had to, pump the brakes. It seems insane. It seems insane that a professional sports team would go through these machinations, but as I always say, the answer to everything involving the Jets is. It's the Jets.
Right.
It is the Jets.
Any question you have that why would this happen? How could they? Who? It's the Jets. That's all you have to say. And people go, oh, you're right. You're right. Mm-hmm. So there we go. They stink and they're terrible and they got walloped, deservedly so. And now we can talk about other football.
So let's move on to other football then.
All right, let's do that.
Before we do, actually, I just have one thing to say. How do you think Avery Williamson feels?
Great.
I think he feels great. He went from the worst team in football to the best team in football, right?
Yeah, sure.
In one trade,
Yeah, it's like a dog that escapes the pen,
right?
And then starts to go away and then turns around and has that one last look back at his buddies that are still stuck. I'll send for you guys.
That's right.
He goes into the woods.
One day you're in the pound, and the next day you're a Kardashian lapdog.
Yeah, you're running free in a field of wheat with pieces of mutton laying around everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that. Okay.
Maybe not mutton. Pork chops, let's say.
Rather be a Kardashian lapdog.
Yeah, right. Well, that brings us some other things, and Dave just writes in. He says, "Are the Steelers for real?" That brings us some other football. Are the Steelers for real? Let's talk about that.
Well, they finally beat a really good team because they've had the luxury of sort of feasting on
teams. They beat the Titans too, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, but what's the Titans' record?
Well, that's true too, because the
Titans,
the Bengals beat the Titans this week too. So.
Yeah,
the Titans are 5-2.
Are they? Yeah.
Yeah, they're 5-2. They lost their second game to the Bengals this week. So.
Yeah.
And I mean that's no slouch. I mean the Bengals. I mean Joe Burrow is.
I mean they beat a really good Ravens team. They won a close game. They've won the games that they should have won. I think they are for real. Are they as good as Kansas City if Kansas City's healthy? Probably not, but they've proven that they can beat the Ravens and get, if they have to, if they meet up in the playoffs, that they can get past them.
Right.
And
yeah, I mean, they've beaten them twice, right?
No, just once.
Oh no, just once. Who am I thinking? Well, anyway. They played a couple of good teams, and I think the next 3 weeks they've got a pretty easy schedule. I don't remember who all the teams are, but someone described it as a buffet.
Right.
So they could easily go 10-0. And I listen. At this point, I would almost call it a toss up between who's the best, them or Kansas City. As good as Kansas City is. I mean, Steelers are looking real good. Big Ben is looking real good, and they are. They took on the Ravens, and I know that they're struggling a little bit in their own right in certain ways.
Right.
But the Steelers look awfully good all the way around.
Well, they have the Cowboys this week coming up.
There you go.
Then they have the Bengals.
Okay, which might be a little bit tougher game than they would think, but we'll see how the development of Joe Burrow continues.
They're away for the Cowboys, home for the Bengals, then they're away for the Jags.
Okay, well, that's pretty much, that's, as Mike Francesa would say, that's a win.
That's a win. Then they're home for the Ravens again.
Is that Thanksgiving? That's Thanksgiving game. Huh?
That's a Thanksgiving game. That's the Thanksgiving evening game.
Yeah. I mean, they get the NFC East this year, so
yeah.
I mean, the only teams I see getting in their way, I mean, Cincinnati might make it closer than you think. Obviously, they got to play Baltimore again, and then Buffalo. Yeah. Indianapolis is looking pretty good.
I was going to say the Colts too on that list, but I mean, I wouldn't. You know what?
They could be 14-2 or 15-1 or 13-3 easily.
Honestly, there's nobody on this list that they can't beat. And
right.
I'm not saying that they're going to go 16-0 because they're not. But if they're going to lose, I'm going to say they're going to lose a game to the Ravens and they're going to lose a game to either the Bengals or the Colts, and they're going to be 14-2. That's my guess with the Steelers.
Yeah.
So.
And they it looks like they have Baltimore at home too.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the Colts deal give them some. And look, they finish up with Cleveland, and you never know which Cleveland team is going to show up.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
That could be a 38-35 Cleveland victory.
Well, and depending on what everybody else does, that game might not mean anything.
That's true too.
So yeah, no, they're for real. I think this was a big game for them, and the fact that they won a close game and came back against Baltimore, they looked pretty good. They got their defense looks very good, and their offense is putting up points.
They're getting it done.
They are getting it done. Well, speaking of getting it done, let's switch gears and talk about the Falcons actually winning a game against the Panthers, who I think we all thought we're going to win that game. I don't think anybody picked the Panthers. Did any of us take the Panthers? We'll talk about more of that in Beaten by the Coin. But
I think there was a couple of guys that picked the Panthers.
Was there?
Maybe.
I know I picked the Panthers, but yeah.
I don't remember.
Well,
because when you say Falcons and Panthers, my eyes just gloss over.
Yeah, so they're 2-6 and on the way up now. Are the
2-6 and on the way up to 3-6?
Well, I mean, if you go back to the beginning of the season, the Falcons could easily be. They could have won four more games.
Yeah, well, I mean,
yep.
if under that seriously though, I mean the Giants were in every game too. I mean the only game they really lost was the 49ers.
You're such
7-1, right?
You're such a Giants fan.
Yeah, but I mean I'm using the same technology.
Yeah, you're using the same technology, all right.
Yeah, I'm using the same technology. Right?
Irrationality.
There you go.
Well, yeah, anybody could have won any games.
Anybody,
I mean, theoretically, it's
on any given Sunday.
There's a universe. They play the games.
There's a universe somewhere where the Giants are undefeated. It's just not this one.
It just
it's
depends
not
on
the
which
New York Giants. It's the Tokyo Giants.
Yeah, so the Falcons get a win against a pretty lousy team, but you're supposed to beat the teams that are not good.
You're supposed to, yeah. But the Falcons aren't good either, though. So I mean,
listen. We were saying, I think a couple of weeks ago, we were saying we think they're better than their record.
Well, they are better than their record.
A couple of
I think the Panthers are better than the record too, though.
Yeah, but the Falcons had a couple of disastrous meltdowns.
This is true.
And then we kind of went, maybe they're not better than their. Can you be deemed better than your record when you don't go after the onside kick and make these comical. Find new comical ways to lose games. So,
I just want
maybe we're back to they're better than their record.
Maybe they are, but I just want to point out to the fact that Matt Ryan actually had only 19 yards less rushing than Todd Gurley did. All right.
Yeah. That's good for him.
But when Julio Jones, catches passes for 137 yards, then
Matt Ryan's a good quarterback.
He is.
Yep. Speaking of 2-win teams, how do we like those Vikings?
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. It's kind of why I wore what I'm wearing today, this ensemble, if you will.
Is this another down game by the Packers, or did the Vikings just find something that maybe is there? We talked about them as maybe being better than their record when they were.
I think yes and yes. I think the Vikings are a little better than their record, and I think Green Bay had another inconsistent game.
I'm actually shocked that they did. I mean. You know what? It's a divisional thing. I mean, it's a Green Bay, Minnesota thing. I chalked it up to that. I did. The Vikings are better than the record. The Vikings are not a 2-5 team. They're a 4-3 team.
Dalvin Cook is certainly better than their record.
Dalvin Cook is better than 2-5. Dalvin Cook is 5-1. Or 6-1 rather.
So did he expose a little bit of a hole there in the Packers D? I mean, it certainly seems like he did, but is this
Meg
something? Hey, Meg.
Riley says, hi, Radio Pete.
Hi, Meg. Thanks for listening and watching.
But yeah, I think Dalvin Cook was just a monster. I mean, he rushed for 163 yards. And, I mean, if your defensive front can't stuff a running back to less than 163 yards, you're going to lose the game. You're just going to lose the game.
Especially when he goes in the end zone 4 times too.
That's another reason. Yeah. So, but I think it was more the Packers being down again, and if they keep these up and down weeks, they're not going to get anywhere. They're going to just give everything over to the Seahawks, and for that matter, the Bucks. But I think this had a lot to do with just a divisional. And not just specifically divisional, not just generally divisional, specifically the Vikings Green Bay matchup.
Yeah, they tend to split almost every year. Yeah, don't they? I'm not basing that on any facts. I'm just basing it on my.
I buy it. I absolutely believe it.
Yeah, I said it with conviction.
No, they definitely split. But the fact that this game was in Lambeau, though, that was a little
the home crowd advantage is just
the home crowd.
The home COVID advantage was
the home speaker.
I guess my question is kind of like, does this necessarily sort of drop Green Bay in the pantheon of people's expectations of them, or do we just kind of look at it as, it was a divisional game? Cook was coming back from injury. I think he just went off. And, more of an anomaly than anything else. Right. Or is it, hey, the Packers, maybe they, only have a good run D against lousy running backs.
Mm-hmm. I still think
it's not necessarily a fluke.
I still think they're better than the Bears. And I still think, when you talk about the NFC, there's 3 teams there. And Tampa Bay didn't necessarily have a great week, almost losing to a win, 1-win Giants team. So
it's any given week.
Any given week, I think Tampa Bay and the Seahawks are a little bit above Green Bay, but I'm not gonna pick against Aaron Rodgers in a playoff game.
No,
not based on this game.
They're still going to win the division. I mean,
I
the
agree.
Lions and the Vikings are not catching Green Bay. The Bears might give them a little run for their money, but I don't think it's going to pan out 100%. I mean, the Bears might wind up with a wild card, but I think Green Bay is still winning this division. Whether they're a 2 seed or a 3 seed, I don't think they're a 1 seed, but whether they're a 2 seed or a 3 seed remains, we'll see in about 9 weeks.
Well, speaking of the Bears, who's going to play quarterback for them now? I think I read today Trubisky hurt his shoulder, and Foles is in the doghouse, right?
Is he?
I think so. I mean, I don't know. Do we still buy the Foles has any pixie dust outside of Philly?
Well, I mean, if Foles is healthy, then I think you have to play him.
Yeah, I guess. But, I mean, I'm not seeing the kind of star quality that really would earn him the start lately. Not that I'm a Bears fan or anything, but then again, we know that Nagy is the coach. Apparently doesn't like Mitchell Trubisky at all and doesn't want him to play or doesn't want him to start him and doesn't want to coach him. Yeah, so a bit of a conundrum, perhaps.
There's been a lot of calls to replace Foles with Trubisky, and basically by the fan base, but Matt Nagy has said Nick Foles is back no matter what, no matter who complains. So he's got Nick Foles' back.
All right. Well,
I agree with them. I think he gives them their best chance to win. Yeah, they've had a couple games that haven't been stellar, but I think it's also a reflection on his team just kind of coming back down to earth a little bit.
Right.
Okay. That's fine with me. I buy all that. Yeah. What else? How about them Dolphins?
Yeah. That before we get to the Dolphins, let me just ask you about the paint drying, 3.5 hour paint drying on Sunday night. Did you see any of that?
It was good. It was my favorite. I think it was a semi-gloss. It was very.
It was. It started out matte. It got to semi-gloss.
That's right. A whole lot of rubbing. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, it was easier to clean some of the crap off of it because it was semi-gloss.
Right. But there was still some crap there.
Yeah, I didn't we have like a flex schedule kind of thing? Was that only for Monday? Like, remember when there was COVID? What was it, last week or 2 weeks ago? And they flipped the night game and the day game. And like, can't they do that?
They sent the Bucks and the Raiders to the day game, and they brought the Seahawks and the Cardinals to the night game.
Yeah. So
why would you leave 3 total wins of 2 teams in the Sunday night slot?
Yeah, I mean, whether you think these teams are better than their record or they haven't played reflective of their talent or whatever, the numbers speak for themselves. They're terrible. Why are you putting them on?
I can tell you why in 2 words.
The marquee nighttime matchup.
I can tell you why in 2 words.
Okay.
Jerry Jones.
I've heard that. I've heard of that guy. Who is he?
Well,
the Secretary of State. That's a good point. You might be right about that.
Jerry Jones called Roger Goodell and said, "You move me, I do not. I will not be a happy camper."
Even the Cowboys, even when the Cowboys stink, they have a big viewership. They have
so it's just a draw, right?
Yeah, and the Eagles are pretty. It's just
Cowboys could be 0-15, and they're still going to draw enough.
There wasn't a better game that you could think would.
Well, there's probably
plenty of better games.
10 better games, but.
That was a rhtorical question.
It's still why were the Giants on Monday night? Against Tampa,
in the same vein,
game would have been a bigger draw.
What's that?
The Saints Bears game would have been a bigger draw for the night game.
And by the way, that's the other team that I think it confounds me, but might be the other team in the NFC that's. You better look out for, and that's New Orleans. I mean, is New Orleans better than Green Bay right now? I don't know.
No, I don't know. They're too inconsistent.
So is Green Bay.
And I don't even mean week to week. I mean during the game. They're too inconsistent.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of talk about Breeze, and he's not himself or not his old self, and as he goes, so go the teams. But again, they're certainly a team that's capable of turning it on at any time, and then. you'd be hard when they're playing well. That you'd be hard pressed, I think, to say they're not the best team in the NFC.
Right.
Yeah.
And that when they've got it cranked up, they certainly have the tools to do so.
Right.
Well, the NFL.com has them at number 6 in the power rankings, ahead of Green Bay, who's 7, ahead of Buffalo, who's 8, and ahead of Indianapolis and Arizona. And
I would go out on a limb to say that that's probably just because of this past weekend. They probably
true.
I'm not gonna place Green Bay and New Orleans far apart from each other.
I agree. Close to each other. What I'm saying. I mean, I think I forget about New Orleans because they had their inconsistency, and they had that stretch there where I thought they lost a couple games that they definitely should have won. But I don't think I want to play them in the first round of the playoffs.
No, I wouldn't.
But if you had to put a bet down as to who will have the better season, you'd probably say Green Bay. I'd have more confidence in Green Bay. Maybe not. I don't know.
I think it's a toss.
Let me rephrase that. If I had to put a bet down, I would say Green Bay is probably more likely to have a better season. But
and so would I, and my cap would too. But
and right now, as bad as we thought New Orleans was, and as good as we think Green Bay is, they have the same record.
Yeah, they do. They do have the same record. Yeah. So speaking of records, why don't we go on to this week's picks? Want to do some picks?
Picks. We could do picks.
Refresh my memory. Well, I'm sure I was mediocre as always.
Oh wait, I gotta pull up. Hold on.
Let's see where they are. Beaten by the coin.
Beaten by the coin.
I'm sure I'll lose to the coin.
No one wants to be beaten by the coin.
Oh, that's good stuff. I was unprepared. All right, so let's do a quick recap of Week 8. And basically, Johnny, Harry, you both went 3-1. Respectable. The coin went 2-2 again. And yours truly had his second straight 4-0 week, thanks to the Atlanta Falcons pulling it out against them pesky Panthers.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
So I am now one game behind you, Mr. Jersey.
On my heels.
On your heels. And Harry, you're a couple games back, 4 games back, 17-10. So John's 21-6. I'm 20-7. You're 17-10, and the coin remains a game under 500 at 13-14. So there you go.
All pretty respectable. You guys are doing really well, you know.
And listen, we got a lot of time left in the season. So
that's right.
All right, so let's start off this week with Green Bay, hosted by San Francisco. That is supposedly, we'll assume, the Thursday night game, unless anybody gets sick or whatever.
At the moment, the game is still on.
Yes, the game is still on.
It's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
It could be. And I will pick first, and I will pick Green Bay. Right. Again, I don't know why. I just think they're going to win.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to obviously echo your pick there. Green Bay's gonna win. San Francisco. I mean, George Kittle's out probably for the rest of the year. Garoppolo is out for 4 to 6 weeks with a high ankle sprain.
Yeah.
They're decimated even more than they were for the last several weeks. So they have nobody, and Green Bay is definitely pissed off that they lost last week. So, yeah, Green Bay's winning this game.
Yeah, I think too many injuries for the 49ers, or else I would go out on a limb and take them, but I think Green Bay wins.
All right, let's flip the coin. And the coin says tails, which is the away team, so the coin goes with Green Bay as well.
There you go.
There we go. All right, those Giants against that football team in that football team's hometown. And I will let the two Giant fans pick this game.
Oh, you want to go first?
Listen, you don't have to watch it. You just have to pick it.
You know, unfortunately, I think the Giants are going to win.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to say, same as Harry. I think the Giants are going to win this game.
Wow.
Based on how they played the Bucs last week, there should be no reason the Giants do not win this game. But yeah, I'm picking the Giants.
Well, the smart money for me would be to just agree with you and at least maintain my status. But I am going to take the football team.
I hope you're right.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm doing it.
I kind of hope so.
All right, let's flip the old quarter here, and they're going tails. So that is the Giants as well. So there we go. So once again, I'm out on the limb.
You're on an island
by myself, but it worked out with the Falcons last week. So there's no chance it's working out this week.
There you go.
All right. Nolans, the aforementioned Saints versus the Bucks. Harry, you want to start us off on this one?
This is a game that scares me a little bit. Tampa Bay did not. They sort of reversed what I thought was going on with them, but they still won that game. It's going to be a good game. There's a couple of good games this week. This is going to be one of those. I think Tampa Bay will win.
Okay.
All right.
John?
Yeah, I think that based on Harry's take on it, based on what the Bucs did against the Giants this past week, and I think some of that was the Giants' defense. I'm not going to talk about the offense, but I think some of that was the Giants' defense, and some of that was the Bucs. Looking at what Drew Brees was able to do, even though there's the inconsistency even throughout the games, I'm going to take the Saints. I'm going to say New Orleans is going to win this game.
You take the Saints, all right. I tend to think that Brady's going to get on everybody's butt based on that performance against the Giants, and they're going to come out strong. And I'm going to take the Bucs. I agree with Harry.
And we're going to see Antonio Brown.
That's right.
This is true. So there's a couple drop passes right there.
Yeah.
And maybe a couple touchdowns.
Or a couple touchdowns, yeah.
One touchdown and two drop passes.
Two of each.
It could be that's fine. I'll take that every week.
All right, let's flip the coin. And the coin comes up heads, which is the home team. So that is Tampa. So Johnny out on a limb.
I'm on an island.
Saints versus Tampa Bay.
There you go.
And then anybody want to take the Jets?
Nope.
Absolutely not. Are they playing Hofstra? I'll take it.
I'm very tempted because wouldn't it be?
They're playing Don Bosco.
I'll take Hofstra and give three.
Give three.
Wouldn't it just be perfect for this strange year that we're in if their the Jets' lone win this season was against the Patriots? That would seem some sort of poetic justice.
It would.
I do think, oddly enough, looking at this game and what's happened, either the Patriots are going to come out and really correct the ship, or the Patriots are just going to let it sink, and it's just going to be one of those years that you've never seen from a Belichick team, really ever in New England.
Yeah.
It's hard to know which. And Cam,
the Jets could win this game.
They could,
but I don't think they will.
Cam has not looked good since he got sick.
He looks horrible.
But you know what? This could be the start of what's his first name? Jared Stidham. Era, which might only last the rest of the season. But who knows? He might be good.
I mean, if Cam doesn't fumble that ball, the Patriots win that game.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I got a couple things on that. Really quick. If Belichick is actually, and a couple people were speculating about this past week, if he is tanking a little bit, all he needs to do is lose a couple other extra games, and he can control that based on him playing the Jets. Belichick, if he tanks, has the control to lose the games to the Jets and get the first pick.
Yeah, but can he do that with the Jets?
If he does that, wouldn't that make sense? You think Trevor Lawrence doesn't want to go to the Jets? I think in a heartbeat he'd go to New England.
Yeah, I agree. And if they're going to tank it, then you might see both teams doing their best Todd Gurley, but being successful and not crossing the goal line.
But
I don't want any scoring.
It's going to be the Todd Gurley shuffle.
No scoring.
But based on that though, whatchamacallit, the Jets will, if the Giants win on Sunday against the football team, then that means that the Jets can win the game and not lose the first pick at that point. So if they're tanking,
I'm sure they have no clue about that.
I just have one thing to say.
Way too much. Credit.
Too much. You're thinking way too deeply. Yeah. I just have one thing to say though, is that Cam Newton aside, I mean, this just shows that the Patriots really are really thin on the offensive end.
Right.
And I think this, with what he's done with Tampa Bay and what he did the last couple seasons with New England, does this just not add to the Tom Brady, saga to his?
Yeah, we're rapidly coming, I think, to a pretty powerful consensus with respect to was it Belichick or was it Brady? And obviously, it was some of each. It was some of each, Brady, than Belichick.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to pick New England. I can't pick the Jets. I'm sorry. So let's flip the old
pick the Jets
coin here, and that was heads. Coin came up heads, which of course is the away team. So we all agree on Green Bay, and we all agree on New England.
There you go.
You can change it, Harry.
I think New England will win, but this is the most positive I felt about a Jets win all season.
Yeah, I think if it's gonna happen, it's probably gonna be this week. But I'll be thrilled to be wrong.
Right.
Well, I don't know. Maybe not that thrilled.
No,
not that thrilled.
Pats,
but it'll be only because it's against the Patriots.
Right.
So I'll be mildly thrilled.
Right.
I'll be if they win. I'll be All right, and that's it for picks.
All right, before we finish football, let's go around the NFL. We talked about you started bringing up the Dolphins before. Let's go around the NFL. Let's do the AFC East really quick. We've talked about the Jets and the Pats just now in beaten by the coin. We can leave that alone. Let's talk about the Dolphins and the Bills. Let's talk about the top end of the AFC East right now. Thoughts on the Dolphins? Are they for real, even with Tua?
Does it matter, given the division that they're in?
Not at all. It would be worse if they were in the NFC East, but still.
Yeah. We probably are all in agreement that, not that Tua doesn't deserve a shot, but, if you really want to win, Fitzpatrick and the way he was playing, at least for now, was the better way to go.
Sure.
Did the Dolphins win because of Tua, or did they win more really because their defense played pretty well?
Defense played good.
It was the defense. So,
Parker didn't have a great game. Tua, didn't have a bad game by any means, but
right. In other words, you knew what you had with Fitzpatrick.
Sure.
And we say, okay, well, now's about the time when he starts his annual slide, right? But it hadn't happened yet, so why would you pull him out? But you want to see the new guy. He drafted him, and so you knew what you had with Fitzpatrick, and that was probably going to be enough. You'd probably come in second at least, but maybe you could win enough games. And if you can get a victory against the Bills, who knows? You might win the division. Now you've got Tua, and now the book is open again on what this team is going to be, and you're going to have to play a few games and see what happens with Tua. Now you've won one of them, but as we just said, mostly because of defense. Sure. And what happens if he struggles and you lose the next couple of weeks? Do you then say, okay, he's not ready? Right? If he gets hurt, that simplifies things. But what if he plays really poorly the next couple of weeks, but you're still kind of in it?
Yeah, I don't think you can take.
Are you going to yank him? Are you going to?
They're going to stick. They're going to
stick. You're going to stick with him, and so then you're saying, okay, well, we're not going to try and win the division with a winless. Most likely, the Jets a winless team in it.
Sure. And
Buffalo, I don't know. To me, they're seeming almost more questionable as each week goes by. And certainly not the powerhouse that we thought early on in the season when we talked about it. They didn't really play anybody. So you're going to leave Tua in and he plays lousy, then you're essentially waving the white flag as far as the division goes.
Yeah.
But if he plays well, then you look like a genius.
Exactly. Well, of course you can always look like a genius, but if they left Fitzpatrick in there, they had a legitimate shot of winning the AFC East. I
agree.
Game and a half between the Bills.
They were getting better.
Right.
They lost to the Patriots. They lost to the Bills in a close one. They beat the Jaguars. They lost the Seahawks in a relatively close game. They beat the 49ers by a ton. They, of course, beat the Jets, and they beat the Rams.
Right.
Now, this week, it took a defensive touchdown, a special teams touchdown, and, some magic, I think, around Tua to get to that.
Right.
But they might be the best team in the AFC East. I just think Tua's this year, and I this is my thoughts on Tua in general in the NFL. I think he's going to cost them a couple games.
Yeah. Just inexperience, being a rookie. He's
they've got to hope to make a lateral move,
right?
Instead of taking a step back, and that's difficult to do when you're right. They are sort of a team on the up, coming up, and you're hoping to make a lateral move by bringing in a rookie quarterback who you can't say he's not injury prone. We'll see how his NFL career goes, but certainly if you look at his college career, it's a guy who gets hurt.
Yeah.
And that's a lot to ask, to sort of take that sideways step and bring in a young guy.
I mean, they kind of have a mixed bag the rest of the season schedule-wise. The good news is they play the AFC East. The bad news is they've got some teams that they should beat in there, like the Broncos, maybe the Bengals, but they also have to play the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Raiders. I mean, these are all games they can win. So, I think if they kept Fitzpatrick in there, they would have. I think it would have been neck and neck with them and the Bills to win the East.
Right.
So what do we think about the Bills here? As I just said, I hate them, so I'm happy if they're not good. But I don't know. Like I said, we talked about them beating up on lousy teams, and maybe they've been exposed a little bit, but they're still good.
Sure. They're AFC East good.
Yeah. I'll give you that. For AFC East good. Like that's a good.
So they're still the favorites to win the division.
At this point, with Tua in there,
at this point,
if Fitzpatrick was still there and it was a guarantee that he was going to stay the rest of the season as a starting QB for Miami, then I would say at this point, I know what he said several weeks ago we were talking about, but at this point, I would say that the Dolphins would be looking better. I mean, again, the Dolphins are only a game and a half behind the Bills.
I think the Bills will win the division. They've won the games they're supposed to win. They've lost to the Titans. They lost to the Chiefs. Other than the Titans game, they were in it against the Chiefs. I think the Bills are still a better team, and I think they have more consistency on their side right now.
Right. Yeah. Well, they lost to the Titans, they lost to the Chiefs, and if you just go by halves of football, they lost to the Jets in the first half of that football game too. So,
right.
But
they beat. They won a close one against the Dolphins. They've beaten the Rams. They beat the Raiders. Mm-hmm. They beat the Patriots.
Yeah.
They're not killing anybody, but that's winning close games is a sign of a team that's, I think, able to win close games. And that they got the Seahawks. They're going to have a test this week. They have the Seahawks.
Have a big test this week because I don't think they're winning this week.
I think they got 4 tough games in a row, especially if the 49ers get healthy, because they got the Seahawks, the Cardinals, the Chargers, and the 49ers. Yeah. Then the Steelers.
Yep.
They end the season with a pretty soft schedule of the Broncos, Patriots, and then the Dolphins again. Right. So I think the Dolphins have an easier schedule.
So maybe that last week matchup is going to be an interesting one. It might be a division decider.
Might be going 11-5. I can see them losing to the Seahawks, Cardinals. This is easy to say, obviously, because we're talking about teams that are better than not. But I could see them losing to the Seahawks and Cardinals, losing 2 in a row here, and the Steelers, of course, on the 13th of December. But winning beating the Chargers and the 49ers.
I think you've picked every division winner at 11-5.
Well,
every time you said they're going to win in the division, you said they're going to go 11-5.
Yeah, 11-5 seems to be.
I think if the Bills or the Dolphins go 11-5, then they're definitely winning the AFC East. I think if they go 9-7, they might win.
I think. Well, this is true too, but I think the caveat teams here would be. I don't think the 49ers are. By then, and we're talking about December 7th, I don't think that Garoppolo is going to be back by then, but maybe he is. And if Garoppolo is back by then, maybe they do. Maybe the 49ers do give him a test. And the 49ers are home that game. But the Chargers, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Broncos too. It depends on what the Broncos are doing that week, because the Broncos are home for that game. So
they got to win this week. They got to win last week too, right?
Yeah, they got to win, but they stink.
Yeah, they do. Well, here's an interesting prop bet. Will the winner of the AFC East have twice as many wins as the winner of the NFC East?
Yes.
Close to it, yeah, but yes.
I'd say it's entirely a possibility.
It's a definite possibility.
All right.
It's a definite possibility.
Johnny, okay, so call Vegas. Get in touch with your Vegas contacts, Johnny.
8 wins versus 4.
Put down a C note for me, would you?
Unless the team in the NFC East wins 6 games, which I don't think is going to happen. I think you're going to see the divisional winner be 5-11 or 5-10-1, depending on who the divisional winner is.
That tie is going to finally do something good for somebody.
Right. But yeah, it's highly possible. I'll leave it at that.
All right, there you go. AFC East breakdown. in more ways than one.
Exactly. All right,
the only people breaking down the AFC East.
Exactly. Now that brings us to our weekly segment of Top 10 lists. This week we're doing Top 10 quarterbacks in NFL history. Top 10 quarterbacks in NFL history. And we've put together our lists. I wrote mine, Pete wrote his, Harry wrote his. We put them together, we did the math, we sorted everything out, and we came up with a list that we think are the top 10 quarterbacks in NFL history. And we're actually going to start with Pete. Pete's going to kick us off. And obviously, ironically, I should say, our number 10 quarterback is actually a tie. We have a tie for number 10 spot. Why don't you let us know who the number 10 quarterback in NFL history is?
Yeah, we don't do top 10 lists with only 10.
No,
we give you 11.
You get a little more.
Tied for 10.
Tied for number 10, Pete. Let us know.
Tied for number 10 is Mr. Terry Bradshaw, the man himself, and we talked about him a little bit. We was talking about him a couple of weeks ago, and an interesting article about his broadcasting career and all that. But, he was a pretty good quarterback. He won 4 Super Bowls and 2-time MVP, lots of Pro Bowls. I think it was MVP one time in the league, almost 28,000 passing yards, TDs and interceptions, 212 and 210. Big part of the reason why the Steelers won the game. Maybe his exploits on the field, or his achievements on the field, I could say, sort of overshadowed by the whole yokel kind of personality thing. Terry Bradshaw, and the accent and all that. But he was a heck of a football player. And this was at a time, I think we've talked about this in the past too, when defenses were a lot tougher and were allowed to actually play. And yet, Bradshaw was able to get it done. And of course, I was just thinking about this the other day with Montana and Brady. Just look at the Hall of Famers that were on. Obviously, the teams that won multiple Super Bowls, but he was part of one of the absolute real dynasties in the NFL with Pittsburgh, and tied for 10th on our list. Terry Bradshaw.
Very good. Harry, why don't you tell us who's number 10 as well?
Number 10 also.
Number 10 again. Number 10 is Aaron Rodgers. Personally, I had him higher on my list, but being somebody who's still playing the game, I think everybody kind of knows about Aaron Rodgers. There's many people who would say that he's maybe the best quarterback of all time, but he has the highest career passer rating in a regular season with 102.4. He's got the most consecutive seasons with a passer rating over 100. He's obviously a Super Bowl champion, 5th highest postseason passer rating, lowest career pass interception percentage, best touchdown to interception ratio, best passing yards to interception ratio. I mean, 5-time, he's the first player in NFL history to pass for over 4,000 yards in each of his first 2 seasons. He's been doing it a long time. I think if he wins a second Super Bowl, I think he shoots further up this list. And he's, to me, he's the best quarterback in the history of the Green Bay Packers. And, that's saying a lot, because there's 2 other guys, one who should maybe have been on this list and another one who maybe should not be higher than Aaron Rodgers. But he's just the cream of the crop. I think he hasn't had a lot of great talent around him. He didn't have Lynn Swann and John Stallworth to throw to.
He certainly did not.
But he's one of those quarterbacks who, up until the last few seasons, I think was one of the guys who kind of changed the game. He was mobile. He could run. He had an incredible arm and an accuracy that was fantastic. He's smart, and he doesn't make he doesn't turn the ball over a lot. And I think at the end when it's all said and done, I think he's going to go down as one of the top 3 or 4 of all time.
Yeah, I agree. And as good as some other quarterbacks, and I'll mention Eli Manning, were in the last 2 minutes of a game, minute and a half drill, you want him or you want Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I want Aaron Rodgers. I'm not sure. I mean, other than Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not even sure right now. I mean, if the game's on the line right now, today, and you have to put somebody in there to score with a minute left, if you put Aaron Rodgers on Kansas City, Aaron Rodgers would be just as good or better than Patrick Mahomes with that talent. Not saying he's better than Mahomes right now, but he just doesn't have the depth of talent around him.
I agree.
Yeah,
and they both are insured by State Farm. So I mean,
they are
right. Well, as is everyone. Yeah, maybe he kind of suffers from. He's been around for a while and he's been great for a while.
Right.
And listen, I think part of football culture or American culture is we like new shiny things.
Sure.
So we want to talk about the new guys who are good. And then you go, oh, what about Aaron Rodgers? Yeah, he's good too. So his longevity has maybe kind of worked against him,
right?
As far as people's perception. But yeah, he certainly is one of the all-time top 10, and you could make several good arguments for moving him up on this list.
I agree. Number 10A, Aaron Rodgers. Good job. All right. I'm going to take number 9, and this was referred to by Mr. Lug Nutz before. Number 9 on our list is the man that from Green Bay that just beat out Aaron Rodgers, and that would be Brett Favre. Brett Lorenzo Favre, to be exact.
Oh, you learn something new every day.
Imagine that. There he is, Brett Favre. He was drafted in the second round of the 1991 draft by the Atlanta Falcons, unless you weren't aware. He went to the Falcons in the 91 season. He was drafted at Green Bay Packers in '92. That's when he started his. That's when he actually started his career. He's got a ton of accolades, if you will, to his history, to his career. There you go. I was looking for the word career. There you go. He was, Super Bowl champion in Super Bowl 31. He was a 3-time NFL MVP 3 years in a row, 95, 96, and 97. Has anybody else been MVP 3 years in a row?
Good question.
I don't think in the modern era, no.
I do not believe so. In the modern era, anyway, I do not believe so. Offensive Player of the Year in 95, 3-time first-team All-Pro, same years, 95 to 97. 3-time second-team All-Pro, 01, 02, and 07. He was an 11-time Pro Bowler. He's a 4-time NFL passing touchdowns leader, 2-time NFL passing yards leader. The list goes on and on. I could sit here for an hour and tell you all of his accolades, but just an amazing Iron Man of football. He just kept playing and playing and playing. He did not want to stop. The Giants beat him in the championship game after 07 season, and it was Aaron Rodgers' turn. So where does he go? He goes to the Jets, and then he comes back and he goes to Minnesota for a couple of years, and almost gets back to another Super Bowl with Minnesota.
And had maybe you could argue his best year passing.
Yeah,
with Minnesota,
amazing year with Minnesota
at age 40.
Yeah, crazy year.
Driven. The drive of revenge was strong with that one.
Yes, it was. So Brett Favre, number 9 on our list. Pete, bring us to number 8.
All right, number 8. One of my favorites, being a Dallas Cowboy fan, is Roger the Dodgers Staubach. Listen, I think he went to 3 Super Bowls, won 2 of them. Steelers. Super Bowl MVP 1 time, 6-time Pro Bowler, winner of the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. One of many actually on this list that achieved that accolade. And almost 2,300 rushing yards along with 20 rushing touchdowns in his career, which, by the way, I think to me, one of the most impressive things about Roger Staubach is that he wasn't the starter for Dallas until he was 29 years of age, coming out of the Navy, I believe it was. So he had military requirements that prohibited him, kept him out of the game. So, imagine what he would have been with another 4 or 5 years in the league. He might have been in everybody's, top 5 list, but certainly one of the all-time great Cowboys. And let's see, 153 touchdowns to 109 interceptions. Not a great ratio, but still, he was a guy that would make the play when he needed it. Roger Staubach. Good player. Pretty good. Not bad.
Yeah, I mean, those years were dominated by the Steelers and Cowboys.
Oh, yeah.
And those were great Super Bowls, too.
They were great Super Bowls and a great rivalry. And, each of those teams had guys that, who's going to step up?
Sure.
Tony Dorsett and Drew Hill. And, just incredible teams.
And again, an era of great defenses, too. And they were two of the best.
Great defenses and a great era in football. And, as a kid growing up and being a Giants fan and having friends that, didn't have family fandom in their, as far as football goes in their families and jumping on the bandwagons of the Steelers and the Cowboys, it was really hard, but it was such a great era in football. It really was.
Yeah. And Staubach was a role model kind of in every way.
Yeah.
Stand-up great player.
Kind of like Zeke Elliott.
Yeah.
You mentioned Zeke. Sorry.
See, this is what I'm learning. We have a Zeke sounder.
We have a Zeke drop. There you go.
Military man.
Sure.
If you wanted your kid to emulate somebody, in that era, Staubach, be hard pressed to find somebody better than Roger Staubach.
All right, folks. Number 8, Roger Staubach. Good job. Harry, why don't you bring us to number 7?
Number 7, I believe I've been told, is Dan Marino, who I say is the Charles Barkley of football. I think if Marino had won a Super Bowl, I think you'd be looking at him at number 1 or 2 on this list. I think these records have been broken, but he was the all-time passing yards leader. He was a 9-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 5-time second-team All-Pro. He was the most valuable player in '84, NFL Offensive Player of the Year in '84. 5-time passing yard leader. I mean, he was just, if you go back and think of the 80s, he was just one of those guys who lit up the airwaves. It was unbelievable, and it was revolutionary in a lot of ways. But he played an era of guys redefining the quarterback position too, with him and Elway and people like Dan Fouts and even Warren Moon, and there was a lot of passing yards all of a sudden in the NFL, and he was one of the best. And he's probably, I think a lot of people knock him down a few notches because he just could never. I think he only got to the Super Bowls. What was it, his first year, right?
First year.
And they couldn't get back. But those Dolphins teams were pretty incredible. Much like Fouts and the Chargers, there were some teams that just couldn't quite get over the hump to win a championship. But he was one of the best.
He was. I agree. As he's on the list,
I would agree. If he'd won a Super Bowl, you'd probably. I mean, as far as just pure passing, you'd probably put him number 1.
I would, yeah. If he had won a Super Bowl, if he had won 2 Super Bowls, he would be hands down number 1.
I mean, there was those great names that you mentioned. He was, even with those guys, he was maybe not head and shoulders above them as far as what he was doing, but he was the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Number 7, Dan Marino. I will take number 6. Number 6 is Mr. Otto Graham. Otto Everett Graham Jr. Was a quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. He was a Cleveland Brown quarterback from 46 to 55. He's the eldest quarterback on our list here. Definitely the furthest throwback. He was drafted in the first round. He's the number 4 pick overall out of Northwestern in 1944 by the Cleveland Browns. He was a 3-time NFL champion. Won the NFL championship in 50, 54, and 55 with the Browns. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler in 1950 through 54, 4 years in a row. He was a 4-time first-team All-Pro in 51 and 53 through 55. He was a second-team All-Pro in 52, 3-time NFL MVP. There's our other 3-time NFL MVP. But
I think there's four or five that won 3 times, and Peyton Manning won it 5 times, I think.
Did
yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he did. You're right, he did. And 2-time NFL passing yards leader, NFL passing touchdowns leader, two-time NFL passer rating leader. Just the stats again, just go on and on and on. Otto Graham was a beast. He was such a good quarterback.
44 rushing touchdowns too.
44 rushing touchdowns.
That is a big number
for a quarterback. Unbelievable. Yeah, 44 rushing touchdowns. He threw for almost 14,000 yards, which in today's NFL is nothing. In the 1940s NFL is amazing.
Yeah.
Passing wasn't a thing.
It translates almost to what the dollar amount would be today.
Exactly. And he coached after that. He coached for Coast Guard Bears, but he coached the Redskins for 3 years too. So,
and you could probably, I think it's pretty safely say, the Cleveland Browns have not had a quarterback that could hold a candle to him since.
No.
Kosar came close.
Kosar.
But couldn't hold the
Cardiac
candle,
Kids. They were. They were interesting back in the 80s. They were, and Kosar was close, but yeah, Otto Graham still beats him out as far as I'm concerned. And there you go, number 6, Otto Graham. There you go.
Excellent.
Pete, why don't you tell us who number 5 is?
Number 5, the aforementioned Peyton Manning from the Colts and then the Broncos. I think, you could make several arguments that Peyton Manning might be number 1 or even maybe number 2 on this list as well, just because of his ability to read defenses, change up plays. He's a legend in that regard, and coming to the line, knowing what the defense was going to do, maybe even before they did, and making adjustments. So just some of his accolades, obviously, 2-time Super Bowl champ, although the last one with the Broncos was I don't want to say tainted, but the had more to do with the defense than it did with him.
You mean it's very Elway-esque?
Yeah. But I wouldn't put him in that quite in the same category as Elway as far as that goes. But listen, 14 Pro Bowls, 5 times the MVP, 2-time Offensive Player of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, obviously in that year. And what can you say? He's 5th on our list. This is a really tough category because there's a lot of really good quarterbacks, but
it is.
There's no argument whatsoever. I think that he should be certainly in anyone and everyone's top 5 list.
Yeah,
I agree. Absolutely.
I mean, almost 72,000 passing yards and 539 touchdowns.
Yeah, he was Dan Marino 2.0. I mean, I think he was built in that mold, and early on in his career, he was just unbelievable. And I do give him more credit. When he came to the Broncos, he had one of his best years, the year that they didn't win the championship. The year that
true.
The year that they won the championship, he actually wasn't even the starter for part of that year.
4 or 5
he was hurt, came back in. And I really do think he was more instrumental than his stats. I don't think the Broncos win that Super Bowl without Manning at quarterback. Granted, he was on his last leg. He did not have his stats don't really look anything impressive. Yeah. But he was the right guy for the right time for that team. And I don't think they win that with another quarterback.
They needed a field general that year, and that's what he was.
And he had some clutch plays.
And I guess you could say that, they knew what his limitations were,
mm-hmm.
and yet they won despite those. So maybe actually put that in his favor.
And I think it helped cement his legacy because he had some years there where he wasn't necessarily lighting it up in the playoffs.
Right, that was the knock on him. He won one Super Bowl, but he should have won a couple others.
Right.
And listen, anybody who wins 2, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. He won 2, but he should have won 4.
2 puts you in a completely different category.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Peyton Manning. There we go. Number 5.
Peyton Manning, number 5. Harry, why don't you tell us who number 4 is?
Number 4. Look, living here in Denver, this is, I think, probably the one person who is associated with Denver and maybe all of Colorado is John Elway. And if you're here in Denver, there's no better quarterback in the history of the NFL. He is just an icon. And again, another guy who went to 4 Super Bowls, didn't win any of them at the height of his career. And then later on in his career, the Broncos built a team around him that was spectacular. And he won two Super Bowls. He he was 2-time Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP, NFL Most Valuable Player Award, first team All Pro in '87, 2-time second team All Pro. I mean, this tells you just how good the quarterbacks were in his era. He was a 9-time Pro Bowler, NFL passing yards leader in '93. I think he's probably also, and he was one of the first guys too to use his legs in a way. He was incredibly mobile, and even I think the one play other than the drive maybe that defines his career is that run that he did when he got hit and did the helicopter spin in the Super Bowl. That'll just go down. And it was a big play, and he was using his legs again at whatever age he was then. But yeah, I think it won 98. 98, man. But he also as a administrator of the Broncos won another Super Bowl, and he was the guy who brought Peyton Manning back into to Denver. So he's a legend, obviously, here in Denver. I think he's on a lot of people's top 5 list. I think deserving to be at number 4, John Elway.
There you go, John Elway.
Yeah, they were always in it if Elway was on the field.
They were.
There was really, literally never a situation where you weren't in it with John Elway.
As a Giants fan, I'm just glad he lost his first Super Bowl, but we'll leave it at that. No, definitely deserving of it. Number 4, John Elway. Good job. I'm going to take number 3. Number 3 is none other than Mr. Johnny Unitas. Johnny U. John Constantine Unitas, to be exact. Middle names are always an interesting thing. Drafted out of Louisville, 1955 in the 9th round with the 102nd pick overall in the 55 draft. He was drafted by the Steelers, though, just for a year. Never left the practice squad off season. Didn't play for the Steelers. And then he went to the Colts in 56. Played from 56 to 72. And that's a lot of years back in the day, especially for the pounding that this guy took. But tons and tons and tons of accolades for Mr. Unitas. He just racked them up, if you will. Super Bowl champion, obviously in Super Bowl 5. But I think even more so than that game, winning the Super Bowl, was winning the NFL championship in 1958. In the greatest game ever played, if you will, against the Giants. Crazy game. Giants were heavy favorites in that game. Should have walked away with that game, and the Colts came back and won that game. But again, Super Bowl champion in Super Bowl 5, 3-time NFL champion, 58, obviously, 59, and 68. 68, they wound up going to the Super Bowl because the Super Bowl started a couple years before that. Then they got beat by a team in the Super Bowl. Forget who that team was. It was
some upstarts, I think.
Some upstart team.
They literally were.
They were. But he was a 3-time NFL MVP. Here we go again. My 3 guys were 3-time NFL MVPs. NFL Man of the Year in 1970. He was a 5-time first-team All-Pro, 3-time second-team All-Pro, 10-time Pro Bowler, 4-time NFL passing yards leader, 4-time NFL passing touchdowns leader. He's part of the 1960s All-Decade team, the 50th anniversary team, the 75th anniversary team, the 100th anniversary team. His numbers retired for the Colts. Louisville Cardinals, too, his college team. They retired his number, too. Yeah, just Johnny Unitas was the prototypical quarterback back in then. What I said before about Otto Graham, and granted, Otto Graham played about 20 years, 15 years, actually. 12 years actually started before Johnny Unitas, but Johnny Unitas had over 40,000 passing yards. Think about that. He played from 1956 to 1972, and those were years they were not airing it out then too. And as much as Otto Graham threw back then, 40,000 passing yards from 1956 to 1972. Amazing, just crazy to think about that he actually did that.
290 touchdowns. And 32 touchdowns in 1959 are numbers that stand out for him. And I would say he, as much, if not more than any other quarterback, sort of ushered in the era where the passing game was considered almost like a viable first down option. Like we can count on the passing game. He showed that you could do that. Because let's face it, they weren't throwing a lot. It was a run first game. It was a run first league. And to me, Johnny U changed people's perception to the point where they said, yeah, we can actually pass a lot more. Now, you kind of needed a Johnny Unitas or somebody close to him in talent level to do that. But to me, more than anybody, he opened up basically an entire league's eyes to the fact that you could have more of a passing game and be successful.
Yeah. He was the face of the NFL forever too. I mean, I think him and Jim Brown, I think Unitas started earlier than Brown, if my memory is correct, but they were, he was just that guy. He was the Babe Ruth of football.
And if he'd been healthy, then those upstarts from New York might not have won that Super Bowl.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, he did come in at the end, but he was not really able to play.
He was not what he was 12 years before.
No. So,
but there he is at number 3, Mr. Johnny Unitas.
All right,
Pete, why don't you tell us who number 2 is?
Number 2, my personal number 1, but he came out number 2 in our overall rankings. I don't know his middle name. I'm going to say it's Texas, Joe Texas Montana.
I think it's Hannah.
That was what I was looking for, but I couldn't get there. Thank you, Rick. What can you say about Joe Montana? To me, he's really the only guy that truly, legitimately, you could put ahead of who our number 1 is going to be, and we all know who that is. Look, 4 Super Bowls he went to, never lost, 3-time MVP. Again, you could say, well, listen, you couldn't swing a dead cat around that San Francisco locker room without thunking a couple of Pro Bowlers or a Hall of Famers in the head. But he was the engine that made it go. The perfect guy, one of the all-time great coaches, of course, in Bill Walsh. But you could say that about the guy who's number 1 too. Montana, just the guy, forget about the Kansas City in the latter years. Good stats: 273 touchdowns, 139 interceptions, 92.3 rating. And other accolades as well, 8-time Pro Bowler and 3-time All-Pro, 2-time MVP. So the king of cool also, Joe Montana. To me, he's number 1 because he went and never lost a Super Bowl. And I hate the guy who's number 1 because I'm a Jet fan. But so there's some bias there. But
Montana was incredible. I mean, he was the
really
Michael Jordan of football for that era. And being a Giants fan is that, I think the better than winning the Super Bowl for me was when the Giants beat Joe Montana and the 49ers. It was one of those upsets that you just don't really see in your lifetime too often. It would be like the Knicks Charles Smith actually making one of the 7 layups and getting past the Bulls. It was that equivalent, I mean, in a lot of ways. And if it wasn't for the number 1 guy who, we'll discuss it in a second. I think it's obvious why he's number 1. But Montana is definitely would be number 1 on a lot of people's lists and was phenomenal.
You could say 1 and 1A.
You could.
Yeah, I mean, but when you look at what the accomplishments are, I think number 1 separates himself from Montana. I wouldn't have said that maybe 10 years ago, but now I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I agree. He does. I just because
I know you hate him. A lot of people do.
Yeah, because of my bias, he's number 2.
It's easy to hate the best.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that, and you could put him 1 and 1A. And the thing I always think about.
I disagree. Yeah,
I think about a couple of things. I think about the fact that he was drafted in the 3rd round of the 79 draft. And Phil Simms, while I love him, and make no mistake, I think he was one of the Giants' best quarterbacks ever. And he had a tough going in the first few years that he was the Giants' quarterback. I was definitely one of those guys that, that whole, oh no, Mr. Phil, back then. But Phil Simms was drafted 7th overall in the 1st round, and Joe Montana taken in the same draft went the 82nd pick overall. So,
and John being the only person to talk about Phil Simms and Joe Montana in the same sentence.
Same thing, exactly. But yeah, the fact that but just to echo what Harry said before, when it comes to the Giants beating Joe Montana and the San Francisco 49ers. And I got to tell you, that year was probably great because that was two wonderful games that the Giants played. They were able to beat the 49ers in the championship game and then go on and win the Super Bowl. And I think that winning the championship game, as incredible as winning the Super Bowl was, and I'm not going to take that away from them by any means, but it was that much better, or at least equal to the beating that team in the championship game. They were so good.
You could argue that 49ers team had 3 of the top 10 football players of all time in Jerry Rice, Joe Montana, and Ronnie Lott.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple other guys in there that were pretty darn good too.
Absolutely.
And a legit dynasty in and of themselves.
But if you pick the best quarterback, I think Montana is going to be in everybody's top 5. If you pick the best receiver of all time, I think Jerry Rice is going to be number 1 on that list for most people. And if you pick the best defensive back of all time, I think Ronnie Lott might just be on the top of that list. So I mean, it was a great team, but Montana was fantastic, and he came up big in the big games. He won 2 Super Bowls.
You're absolutely right. Well, there you go. Number 2, Joe Montana. Harry, why don't you tell us, because we all do not know,
right,
number 1 on our NFL all-time quarterbacks is.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's not Chad Pennington.
Not. It's,
all right.
It's
Mark
not.
Sanchez.
It's Mark Sanchez.
That is such a He is not Pennington over Sanchez.
It's Jeff Hostetler. No, I mean, it's Tom Brady. And look, I'm a New York fan. I'm not going to give somebody who plays for a Boston team. You can't argue this. He was a 6th round pick. He is a 6-time Super Bowl champion. He's been to the Super Bowl, 9 times?
9 times.
You can argue he
20
easily
years, he went almost half of the Super Bowls.
He easily could be a 9-time Super Bowl champion. He's a 4-time Super Bowl MVP, 3-time NFL Most Valuable Player. He's a 14-time Pro Bowler, and he's a unanimous 2010 All-Decade Team and a unanimous NFL 100th Anniversary All-Time Team. And at 43, he might not be done. And I'll say this, of all the quarterbacks on this list, I feel very confident in saying that he won these championships with the least amount of talent around him. Now, yes, he had Randy Moss for 1 year, but he did it. He did it with a number of players who he made a lot better than they would have been on any other team. And yes, he's arguably played with maybe the best coach of all time, and they made an incredible tandem. But you just cannot. Put the ball in this guy's hand with the game on the line, and even at the age of 43, I still feel pretty comfortable with him. And I'm happy that I really questioned him moving on from the Patriots to Tampa Bay. I thought it would be really nice if he could end his career in New England, but it just seemed like he knew what was going on in New England and that they weren't willing to put the talent around him. And he's got some decent talent now, and he's still one of the best in the game. And I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, he's might be the best football player other than Lawrence Taylor of all time. He's that good, and his accomplishments, I think, speak for themselves. He's not going he's not going to break the all-time passing record. He's not going to have a season like Peyton Manning did, or a season like Dan Marino did, but he wins Super Bowls, and he's won a lot of them.
Yeah, he definitely has.
One other thing I want to say about Elway, he wins for going out the best, though.
Yeah.
Back-to-back Super Bowls, and then, okay, thanks, I'm done. Just want to say
but if Brady wins this year and then retires,
yeah,
I think that's even crazier to leave the team that you spent your entire career with, go to Tampa Bay and win a championship.
I'll say this about Tom Brady. He's a system quarterback.
Yeah. The system is pretty simple. It's, hey, let's win.
So right, surround him with a bunch of mediocre players that he can
surround him with a bunch of guys that they got at the Dunkin' Donuts
Are you
on waivers.
Are you saying that Julian Edelman is not one of the top 5 NFL receivers of all time?
Yes, I am.
Oh, all right. Yeah, he is undoubtedly number 1, but I still hate him.
I know. He's easy to hate. I mean, on top of it, he wakes up with Giselle every day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I got
ridiculous.
I got one thing to say. He's already number 1 on our list, and he's number 1 on a lot of lists. All right, he wins the Super Bowl. He wins a Super Bowl. I won't even say this year, but he signed a 2-year contract with the Bucs. If he wins the Super Bowl either this year or next year and retires, I mean, I think he's already number 1 on the list. I think he ices number 1 for many, many.
I think he's the number 1 NFL player of all time, then, without a doubt. If he's not already,
he'll jump up above Lawrence Taylor and just
and I think he's up there with Michael Jordan as far as in LeBron James as far as best athletes of the 20th and 21st century. I mean, without a doubt,
he's certainly up there as far as most hated with Michael Jordan.
This is true.
Those are two people that you either really loved or really hated.
Right. It's easy to hate the best. And, but, I don't hate him as much as Pedro Martinez.
There you go.
And it's easy.
I don't hate Pedro, for the years he played.
No, I mean, I mean that as a Yankee fan, it's easy for me to hate people like Pedro Martinez, who I think is one of the best of all time, even if he was a punk. And if I was on the team when he knocked down Don Zimmer's teeth would be missing. Yeah. But Brady is just one of those guys who transcends it. Yeah, I find myself rooting for the Patriots. And now for Tampa Bay because of him.
Yeah.
All I can say is I'm so glad he spent 20 years in the same division as my team.
I'm sure you are.
Thrilled to have the GOAT.
And the year
in my Jets division.
And finally he leaves and the Jets are what they are this year.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, folks.
Okay, thanks for that salt in the wound.
Yeah. As if you weren't expecting it, number 1, Tom Brady. There you go.
There we go.
And, folks, that brings us to our segment of the show we do every week called Old Balls. This week's Old Balls. Harry, why don't you tell us who this week's Old Balls is?
This week's Old Balls, in keeping with the theme of this list, is a quarterback by the name of Dan Fouts. And look, I'm giving away my age, but as a kid, living on the East Coast, watching the late games, I felt like every Sunday, the Chargers were on or the Dolphins were on, and watching this guy was. I think he was the best pure passer of all time. I also think he was the toughest quarterback that I've ever seen play because he just stood in the pocket. He had absolutely no mobility. It seemed like he threw for 400 yards before 400 yards was a normal thing. And for, 6-7 years there, maybe 8 years there, it just seemed like the San Diego Chargers were lighting up the scoreboard like an NBA team in the 90s. That's how much points they were scoring. He was a 6-time Pro Bowler. He was the NFL Offensive Player of the Year in 82. He's a 4-time passing yards leader, which seems low to me. I don't know. But in the early 80s, this guy was just lighting it up. And he's on the 80s all-time, all-decade team. I don't think he's in the Pro Bowl, and I'm not sure if he will get there. But he was unbelievable. And maybe it's just hindsight of thinking about those games. But that Chargers team, if you liked offense and liked to see the ball aired out, I mean, it could be 3rd and 1, and it seemed like Fouts dropped back and threw for 20 yards. They were one of the most exciting teams. And I think there was a time there where you saw him and Marino and Elway and the AFC, Warren Moon. The AFC was just filled with incredible quarterbacks. And I think he's one of the best Chargers of all time, as good as Phillip Rivers is and as good as his records will be. And when I think of the San Diego Chargers, I think of Dan Fouts. Yeah,
and so do I. I totally agree.
Yeah, a real thinking man's quarterback too. And just a guy that you knew what was going to happen, but you couldn't stop it.
Yeah. He was, and he was just
until they played the Raiders,
right?
Until they played the Raiders in the playoffs, you got to stop them.
Again, another tough team with good quarterbacks. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he played for a lot of years, though. He played up until, just a couple of years in the 90s.
Yeah, 15.
And also a really good analyst.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Happened to have the pleasure of watching a game that he's doing the color on. He's really, really good.
Really good. Yeah. And even in this game, too, he was an analyst. And it's because he didn't hold anything back.
That's right.
But to answer your to revisit your question before, yes, he actually is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
He is, okay.
He put it in 2014, I believe.
Yeah, 43,000 passing yards.
Career passer rating of over 80%. It's above average. But,
still
in the average.
They aired it out so much. He sort of falls into the category of Brett Favre, too, where he did throw a lot of interceptions, but it was also because in a game where teams never threw the ball 35 times, they threw the ball 40 times.
Sure.
And he didn't have a great defense behind him.
No. But, defensive secondaries in that era, too, had a lot more leeway to do things again that they're not allowed to do now.
Right. And I would say Fouts, because Bill Walsh was his offensive coordinator with the Chargers. I think Fouts led to what Walsh did with Montana. So I think Montana was a slightly better, but it's similar guys, just really tough pocket, smart quarterbacks who could just thread the needle like there's no tomorrow. You put Jerry Rice with Dan Fouts on the Chargers, maybe they get to a Super Bowl and maybe they win one.
Yeah. That was the precipice of the whole West Coast offense thing, between Air Coryell and then Bill Walsh taking that up to San Francisco.
I mean, he did have some talent around him. He had Charlie Joyner, and he had what I think is one of the best tight ends I've ever seen in my life, in Kellen Winslow.
Can't wait for the top 10 tight ends list.
I'm looking forward to that too, and Winslow's definitely up on that.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Well, there you go, folks. That's this week's Old Balls. Mr. Dan Fouts. Good job. All right, folks. I think we should switch gears to wrap this up with maybe some baseball. There's some hot stove starting up. First thing to mention is the Mets sale it's in the process of going through. It was approved by the MLB ownership and ironically the New York City mayor too. Steve Cohen is now approved to buy the team, and he's reinstituted his Twitter profile, and he's been asking fans to tweet him as to what they want to see change with the team. I think the funny
always a good move.
Always a good move. But I think the best one I ever saw is
because Jimmy from Staten Island always knows what's best for the rotation.
You know what? Asking the fans is fine. Listening to them, that's the bad part of the equation.
The best one I saw though was my wish for the best thing to happen to the team has already come true. You bought the teams. that was pretty good.
Fortunately, Omar is from wherever he's from I think he's a Yankee fan. So
I think he is. Yeah. But based on that, though, there's been some speculation. I mean, everybody's asking, which of the Mets go after? I mean, the Mets don't have a ton of needs, but they have a solid needs in the places they need needs, or they have needs. They have to look in a catcher, and I think they found their catcher in Nito, but they need somebody like a stopgap.
If you need one, I could send you one over from the Bronx.
We are not taking Gary Sanchez.
Not a bit. But,
we're not drinking any effing Merlot, and we're not taking Gary Sanchez.
Look, I think they really should pursue JT Realmuto, but I don't know if spending the money on him, and not that everybody seems to be under the impression that there's a ton of money and just endless amounts of money to be spent. Now maybe there is. That remains to be seen, but they still have to be smart about it.
They need pitching.
They need
like pitching. Any team. They need pitching.
The biggest issue is pitching and a center fielder.
They have arguably one of the best starters in the game, if not the best starter in the game.
Right.
They need to surround him with a second and third starter, and I think they need. And you think they need another closer,
an entirely new bullpen.
Yeah.
Well, I think they need to anchor their bullpen with a good middle reliever and a closer. I think the other guys that they have, if they're not put in the roles that they're currently in, can be can do a better job. I think the Mets have good, like I've always said, if you combine the Yankees and Mets, you got a championship team.
Sure.
It's just, I think they got a couple more years where their star starter is going to be able to put up the numbers he's going to do. That window is going to close. Yeah. I think they have to build the team around him, and much like the Dodgers did with Kershaw, you got to get that lineup and you got to get some other pitchers. And if there's one thing we learned from this year, you just have to have a lot of them. You can never have enough pitching. You think you do, get some more.
Do they go after Bauer though, with his off-field attitude and everything else? Do they go after Bauer?
If that's the best option on the free market, then yeah, I think you do. Because how many wins did they give you?
He is the number one. He is the number one free agent as far as pitching goes, right? Pete, what do you think?
If you think he's going to win, then you go after him.
Attitude aside, clubhouse issues aside.
I mean, he's in the top 10 pitchers in the league, don't you think?
Yeah, no way.
Top 10 starter.
What would you rather have?
So now you got two of the top 10 starters.
Yeah, you want a guy who pitches like he is and is a bit of a headache, or do you want a guy who's great in the clubhouse and wins, 9 games a year?
Right.
Yeah. I'll take in the case of a pitcher, I'll take the headache.
Yeah, David Cohn's not available, so take the headache. I think he's a better headache than others.
And you think Springer is as far as center field goes, you think Springer's a no-brainer? Just go after him, sign him, give him the money he needs.
I think Springer's one of those guys who's just a clutch. He's a great center fielder and he's a clutch hitter. I think and I would love to see him move from the American League to the National League because he's that Astros team is just deadly. But I think if you get Springer, you get Springer. I also think he's a catalyst kind of guy. He seems to be one of those guys on the Astros, even maybe more so than Altuve, that seems to be an inning starter. He seems to be really that clutch guy. And he can hit the long ball. He can play center field. He can get on base. He's fast. He's young enough that you're going to get some years out of him. Yeah, I think why not? Go for it.
I would say he has, I'm not really sure why, but a little bit less of a stigma than some of the other players on that team, like in Altuve with respect to the garbage can thing. Yeah. I mean, yes, he was part of it, but he doesn't make noise. He doesn't say stupid things. No. It's you might dislike him because he was on that team, but he's not, at least as far as I'm concerned, as hated as some of those other players.
No, I mean he's one of the top 3 center fielders in the game, and
if he comes to your team, you'll forgive all that stuff anyway.
Yeah,
wasn't JD Davis on that team too though?
Yeah,
he's been on Mets a couple of years now, but he was on the 17 Astros.
Yeah, he was. You're right. I mean, the Mets have a way of getting center fielders that are pretty good from teams that do well. I mean, going back to Curtis Granderson, who I always thought was a steal when they got him from the Yankees. But I think you go after both of them, and the time is now because your star pitcher doesn't have a ton of years left in him.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of that, the Mets star pitcher, Mr. Jacob deGrom, was nominated for his third in a row Cy Young award, along with Bauer and Darvish as well from the Cubs. I personally think that it's Bauer's year.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't think.
Yeah, I think so.
I would love to see Jake win 3 in a row, but I think it would just be a farce if he did win it this year with Bauer did this year.
This is an odd year. There wasn't enough of a statistical spread for it to work.
Yeah, you give it the whole 162 games. Maybe it's different, even if the first 60 went the way they did. But I think what Bauer did in Cincinnati was just enough. And wouldn't that be nice, though, to have the Cy Young Award winner for the last 2 years and the current Cy Young Award winner on the same staff? That would be really that would be sweet.
I mean, look, if you get Bauer and Springer, I think the Mets jump right up there with the Dodgers as far as favorites. I really do. I know they have holes in other places, but if they're going to be good enough to get into the playoffs with that team, unless they completely melt down.
Right.
And when they do, having those two guys at 1 and 2, just going to be a tough choice.
And good players can kind of cover some of those holes,
exactly. But here's the thing about having two of those types of pitchers. Okay, say the Mets have to pitch DeGrom to get into the playoffs. Well, then you have a true number one to start every playoff series, no matter where they fall in the lineup. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Go after them. Right. Get them. You know how much pitching getting. This is why being a Yankees fan, it just kills me. We go after all of these bats who can't hit in the playoffs, and yet we have Cole and nobody else pitching.
Well, speaking of that, Cole did not make the cut for nominations into the Cy Young.
Yeah, he's probably on the ball.
More importantly, I think for the MVP, it's LeMahieu, right?
Yeah, DJ LeMahieu got nominated for.
It should be him, shouldn't
American League MVP.
Look, when the Yankees signed DJ LeMahieu, most people in New York were like, "What? The Yankees signed a DJ? What is he going to do? Spin records?" Not very many people, unless they were true baseball fans, because he played here in Colorado, knew who DJ LeMahieu was.
Right.
Having watched him almost every day I knew this guy is a game changer. He's one of the best players in the game, one of the most consistent clutch hitters, and a great all-around baseball guy, especially on the defensive end. Mm-hmm. I knew when he was going. I mean, there was talk there with the Yankees when he first went there. They're going to find a spot for him to play. That was the honest talk.
Yeah, he made that easy.
Yeah, he made it really easy.
There really was no other decision
because of some injuries.
Sure.
And I thought he had an amazing year. I think he deserves the MVP because I think the rest of that Yankees team, A, spent a lot of time on the injured reserve list, and B, underperformed. Yeah. Him and Luke Voit really carried the Yankees offensively this year. And, going back to LeMahieu's had some clutch hits. He had a clutch hit again this year. He was the one who, remember, tied the game up against the Astros until Chapman blew it. He's proven himself, and I think he had a hell of a year. And, being at the top of the lineup against the Yankees, especially with the Yankees played the team that almost won the world championship, the best team in the American League, a lot this year. And he still put up the numbers that he did. Yeah. I think he deserves it.
Well, he's going up against a couple of Jose's. So yeah, Ramirez and Abreu, but he's got a better, his batting average is better. He didn't put up as many homers as them, but
he's not a home run hitter. He's not a home run hitter. I mean, he'll hit clutch ones, but he's a clutch hitter. He's a throwback in a lot of ways. He's also kind of an odd physical specimen for a base. He's kind of a big dude playing, the infield, as fleet as he is, and he can play pretty much any position. Maybe not short, but he can play almost any position in the infield. I just think what he did. If you really watch the Yankees this year, he was the glue. Now he missed a couple games that might hurt him a little bit, but I think he deserves it. I hope he gets it.
Yeah, by and large, I mean, he was the guy that was good. He was consistent, and with rare exception, he was in there.
Yeah, and he's the first Yankee to win a batting title since Bernie Williams, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he was. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think LeMahieu should get it. Just as a quick aside on the American League Cy Young finalists, you got Shane Bieber, Kenta Maeda, and Hyun-Jin Ryu.
Easy for you to say.
You think? I practiced that a couple of times. I think Shane Bieber walks away with it. His
probably
super low. I think Shane Bieber walks away with it.
Yeah, I don't really care.
But and speaking of Gary Sanchez, before did you hear that Gary Sanchez and Miguel Andujar are both decided they're going to play winter ball this year to kind of practice.
Andujar is interesting. I really like Andujar, and the Yankees have they have some options at third base there. At least they had.
Yeah.
Sanchez is just he's in the lower he's in the lower 10% of defensive catchers in the league, and he occasionally hits a home run, and you kind of go, okay, maybe he's back on track. Right. But he's probably the most disappointing Yankee prospect in a long, long time.
Well,
and if
Ramos is available,
and if the Yankees can get pitching and or some role players that and the time to unload Sanchez was 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. But if they can get anything for him, they have
2 years ago. 2 years ago, they were still high on him, though. So why would they unload him?
They were high on him, but because I think you knew, and I think you know that he's just not. I think you keep LeMahieu, you keep Andahar, you keep Aaron Judge. I think everybody else and Luke Voigt. I think everybody else on that Yankees team, especially some of these guys who are getting these exorbitant contracts. Right. I think if somebody wants them and makes you an offer, you take it. I just don't think Stanton's worth it. I just don't think they are. And the Yankees need pitching. And I also think if you want a closer, I got a closer for you too. If you want to throw in anything decent, come on. We've done so well with giving you closers or relief pitchers these past few years.
I'll tell you what. Release your closer and your catcher. Release Sanchez and Chapman, and pick up Ramos because he's available, and you can make a trade for Familia, and you're set.
Yeah, I don't think Familia is an upgrade from Chapman.
He's not a downgrade.
No, you're right.
We could trade them straight up. Neither one of us will be any worse off or any better.
We'll just be scratching. We'll just be banging our heads against the wall in a different spot.
We will be yelling someone else's name.
Right.
Goddamn.
Yeah, they're kind of the same person in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So we'll just change who we're yelling at.
You remember Mariano Rivera? Aroldis Chapman is the opposite of Mariano Rivera to me.
In many ways.
It's just I'm like I always felt so good with Rivera coming in the game, and with Chapman, it's just like, oh boy.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Mets fandom.
Yeah. Welcome to Mets fandom. Yeah.
But there hasn't been a consistent reliever who's just been lights out for year after year after year in the recent history of baseball. It just seems like that.
Yeah, not just for the Yankees.
It just seems like that position is just really hard to. I mean, the guy with the 3 chin hairs on the Dodgers did a good job.
But if you think about the way the pitching is managed now, right? Having all of these arms, right? You want a bunch of arms. You want all these pitchers. Why would you have necessarily? I mean, this one position, which is a very static, right? Well, why not just be situational, right? We have all these. I mean, we have all these great arms. If there's a righty up, we put a righty in. If there's 2 lefties coming up in the 9th inning, we put a lefty in.
Because
it's kind of, I think it's destined to go that way. But
I still think that the differentiator is a closer in the playoffs with the game on the line is a different beast than just a reliever who's next up in line to in a situational matchup. I still think, and it's been proven because the teams that have gotten those hot bullpens have traditionally been winning these last few years. My point being is that it does take a different mentality to get through that. And Houston had it. The Dodgers kind of had it this year too. They had a guy who's coming in at this spot. And it wasn't necessarily a committee type thing. Tampa Bay sort of had that committee thing. And it was more up and down. It was a little less consistent. It takes a special person to close out a game in the playoffs.
Closers are always a little bit off, let's just say, a little bit crazy, or there's definitely something about their the successful ones.
That's a good
something
top
about
10.
the wiring. Oh yeah, that's a great
craziest closers of all time. Brian Wilson on the Giants is my favorite nut job closer of all time. But that's a list that's it's going to be hard to whittle down to a top 10. Yeah. I think the Mets are in a good spot. I mean, I think this new ownership is going to be good. You know how I feel about DeGrom. I think he's maybe the best pitcher in baseball, and I want to see them put a team around him and get him more pitching.
Yeah, I totally agree, and not just as a Mets fan. I totally agree for Jake's sake.
Or we give you Sanchez, we give you Chapman, and DeGrom. You can come see him. He'll be right in the Bronx.
Uh-huh.
But we can't.
I don't think Uncle Steve is doing that.
We can't wear our Mets gear there.
You can, sure you can. Especially nowadays. People would have to look up from their phone to notice you had a Mets.
No one would notice if I wear my Mets DeGrom jersey.
Yeah. To wrap this up, somebody made I guess was it Steve Cohen or Sandy Alderson or whatever? They made a statement the other day. They want to make the Mets the East Coast Dodgers. And,
what does that mean?
And somebody made a point where there already is the East Coast Dodgers. They're called the Yankees. But,
well, we've determined that the Dodgers only win championships on truncated seasons.
Yeah. So what? Right? So they want us to go 9 years? At this they want us to win the division for 9 years and then, we'll have a strike during the season and win one?
The way things are going, where the players are actually going to be playing in bubbles with their arms sticking out of it next year.
Bubbles, yeah.
It's just going to be
real
bubble boy, roll. Let's roll that guy to first base.
Yeah, they're going to have like a spacesuit collar and then the helmet screwed onto the top.
Right. I mean, that's a good question. The Dodgers have been good, but this is the first time they've been able to get over the hump and win a championship. Are they the favorites to win it again?
At the moment, they are.
I don't know. I mean, if the Astros keep Springer and can get healthy and maybe they get a pitcher in the offseason, then I think they're right back. But yeah, I think the Dodgers are. I think that it's the Dodgers and Tampa Bay. If they can keep that team together, watch out. They're going to be good.
Let's see what the richest owner in baseball has to say about all of that. So we'll see we'll see what he does.
The richest owner in baseball has not made great decisions over the last few years, in my humble opinion.
Off the field, you're talking about, right? Because he just became an owner. So.
Oh, you mean the new richest owner?
The new richest owner in baseball.
Gotcha.
Well, we'll probably know relatively shortly what his decision making capability is.
Exactly. All right, folks. On that note, we're going to bid you adieu and thank you for listening to this week's podcast. If you've been watching it on Facebook or anywhere else, you've been seeing the video. This, of course, will be. The audio feed will be up on our podcast channels. Of course, you can subscribe to our podcast feed on Apple Podcast, Spotify, TuneIn, and Stitcher. Please do so. And if, of course, you're looking at this on Facebook, if you haven't done so already, make sure you like our Facebook page so you can check out all our content that we put up. And, of course, our Instagram and Twitter pages as well. All three of them are at The Locker Room. And our website is www.loggerroom.com. That's LAGERROM.com. Folks, have a wonderful weekend. Watch a lot of sports. Enjoy yourselves. Cross your fingers on our picks. And we will talk to you soon, folks. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care.
Peace.
Take care.
Look at the little Tula. She's talking to the producer. And a woman in a jumpsuit throws her a grapefruit.